The day had finally come. A young woman gathered her belongings, relieved that she didn't have much to carry. As the maids quietly watched her departure, one of them hesitated, asking if something was wrong. Claire only turned her back in silence, her expression unreadable. Back at the mansion, the Duke questioned the servants. "Has Lady Claire left?" "Yes, Your Grace," one of the maids answered, placing an envelope in his hand. Inside was a divorce agreement. The Duke's eyes widened. A divorce? Meanwhile, Claire sat inside a carriage bound for her new life. She stared out at the passing scenery, whispering to herself, "I wonder, has he finally found the one he truly loves?" Even as she spoke the words, she realized her thoughts had drifted to him again, to Ian. No matter what had happened between them, her heart still felt as though she had only met him yesterday. Her mind wandered back to the night of a grand banquet. Noblewomen gasped and whispered as Duke Ian entered the hall, his presence commanding the room. His reputation was flawless, an accomplished knight, a young commander, a man who bore the weight of both the royal order and a dukedom. Hidden in a quiet corner, Claire overheard their words. They speculated which fortunate lady would one day capture his heart. "Claire!" Her sister Amelia's voice rang across the hall. Amelia appeared in a dazzling gown, exuding confidence. She teased, "Still hiding in the shadows again? I suppose it suits your plain dress. Anyway, tell me, have you seen the Duke? I must meet him tonight." Amelia swept away, but Claire's solitude didn't last. A butler approached her with a formal bow. "Lady Claire Maurice?" "Yes," she asked nervously. "There is someone who wishes to see you. Please, follow me." Perplexed, Claire trailed behind him until they reached a private room. The door opened, and there he was, Duke Ian, tall and composed, waiting for her. Before she could gather her thoughts, he spoke. "Lady Claire, I am Ian of the Ader ducal family. I have an important matter to discuss." His words struck her like a bolt. The Duke of Ader, speaking directly to her? When he revealed his intention, Claire's heart nearly stopped. "A marriage?" she echoed, barely believing her ears. "Yes," Ian said firmly. Claire blinked in disbelief and even pinched herself, certain it must be a dream. "But we hardly know each other." Ian's voice carried both calm and urgency. He explained how his parents had been pressing him relentlessly. Now that he was nearing 25 and the head of the Ader house, they wanted him married immediately, and if he refused, they would push him into a political union. But then he confessed something unexpected. "There is someone I've loved since childhood," he admitted quietly. "I asked my parents for time, to wait a year so I could propose to her myself. They refused." Claire nodded slowly, beginning to understand. Because she is far away, they don't believe the marriage will happen. Ian sipped his tea, then laid out his proposal. "Lady Claire, marry me for 1 year. After that, we part ways." Her mind spun. The most admired man in the kingdom asking this of me? At last, Claire found her voice. "This is confusing and unbelievable, but very well, I'll agree." Still, the question burned in her chest. "But why me, Your Grace? Of all the women, why choose me?" Ian's gaze was steady. "There are several reasons, but above all, I know of your family's circumstances." Her heart sunk. Of course, the Maurice family, once powerful, now reduced to struggle after a devastating flood 10 years ago that destroyed much of their land. For Claire, his words were both a lifeline and a reminder of the painful truth. The truth of the Maurice family's downfall was harsher than Claire cared to admit. After the flood destroyed their lands, her parents invested desperately in businesses meant to recover their losses, but one after another, those ventures collapsed, leaving the family drowning in debt. And so Ian's proposal became clear. This marriage was not romance. It was a transaction. Claire, unable to stop herself, asked the question lingering in her heart. "But if that's the case, why not propose to my sister?" Amelia is far more charming, far more social than I could ever be. Ian regarded her calmly. I considered that, but your sister's extravagant nature would only draw more eyes, more suspicion. You, Lady Claire, carry yourself with modesty. You wear your humility as naturally as others wear their jewels. That is why I chose you. His words stunned her. He had studied every angle, weighed every possibility. This wasn't a reckless choice. It was deliberate. And my family? Claire asked quietly. Ian nodded. Yes. As part of this agreement, I will provide financial support to revive your family's businesses. It will serve as your dowry. And after 1 year, I will continue helping your household. Claire blinked in shock. Am I truly worth so much to you? His answer was simple, yet revealing. No, it is not you who holds such value. It is this 1 year. This 1 year is everything to me. Hearing the quiet conviction in his voice, Claire realized how deeply he must love the woman from his past. It stirred something unexpected in her. For a man who seemed so cold, his heart was far more romantic than she imagined. Still, his expectations were clear. She would move into his mansion, live as the Duchess, fulfill her duties, and when the year ended, they would part ways. Ian offered her more assurances. If things go well, not only will your family be secured, but I will see to it that you are rewarded. If you wish for a house, for wealth, for a new beginning, I will make it happen. Claire hesitated. She knew the truth of society. Divorced noblewomen often returned to their families, left vulnerable to whatever marriage their parents arranged next. Ian, however, promised more. He would use his influence to ensure her reputation remained intact, that she could still walk into banquets with her head held high. Your generosity surprises me, Your Grace, Claire admitted softly. Ian shook his head. Generous? No. A kind man would never ask this of you, but this is the best way I know to protect what matters most. His honesty struck her, and though his words were sharp, they carried a strange sincerity. At last, Claire drew a breath. I will accept your proposal, but on one condition. Ian's eyes narrowed with curiosity. And what is that? You must convince my parents yourself. For a moment, even the Duke seemed surprised. Then he smirked faintly. That is all? Very well. I doubt your parents would reject a Duke's proposal, but I will honor your condition. Claire straightened, her voice steadier now. If my parents approve, then I will no longer call it an agreement. I will call it marriage. Days later, the wheels were already turning. A letter arrived at the Maurice household, announcing that Duke Ian himself wished to meet with the Marquis. Claire hadn't spoken a word to her parents. She left everything in Ian's hands, knowing they would never have believed her otherwise. The day of his visit came swiftly. The house buzzed with nervous energy. Servants rushed about preparing every detail for the Duke's arrival. Outside, Claire quietly hung laundry, her hands rough with calluses. She could hear the stir of voices inside, but she told herself this was natural. After all, no one expected the most powerful duke in the land to come knocking on their door. Inside the drawing room, Ian stood before her parents, calm, poised, commanding. Thank you for granting me your time. His eyes shifted to the Marquis. I am here today to make a request of you. I would like your permission to marry your daughter, Duke Ian declared, his voice steady, his presence overwhelming. The Marquis and Marchioness froze in shock. Surely they had misheard. You wish to marry our daughter? The Marquis stammered. Ian inclined his head. That is correct. Unless you believe I am unworthy? The Marquis, rattled yet thrilled, immediately barked to his butler. Fetch my daughter at once. He thought the matter would be complicated, yet here the Duke was, handing them a miracle. Moments later, the door opened, and in swept Amelia, glittering in elegance, every hair perfectly placed. She curtsied gracefully. Forgive me for keeping you waiting, Your Grace. Her parents beamed, their pride swelling. Of course it had to be Amelia, beautiful, charming Amelia. Who else could capture a duke's heart? Amelia glided toward Ian, her eyes shining with false modesty. "I never realized you felt this way, Thami. If only you had spoken sooner." But Ian cut her short, his tone like steel. "You misunderstand. It is not you I came for. My proposal is to Lady Claire." The room erupted in stunned silence. Amelia's smile shattered. Amelia's smile shattered. The Marquis and Marchioness gaped in disbelief. Claire? The plain, quiet daughter? The one they had all but dismissed? Ian rose without waiting for their protests. He could already sense something was amiss in this household. The grand furniture, the expensive art, luxury that betrayed their supposed hardship. If they truly sold just one of those paintings, they could restore their fortune. And yet, at the end of the corridor, he finally spotted her.
Claire. Simple, reserved, avoiding the spotlight as always. His eyes softened. "There you are," he said warmly. "My beloved." Claire froze, her cheeks burning. She didn't know what to say. Amelia stormed forward, livid. "Claire, what is the meaning of this? Explain yourself." Claire drew a steady breath. "It's true. I accepted the Duke's proposal." Amelia's fury deepened, but Ian silenced her with a look. The Marquis turned to him, still hesitant. "Are you certain? Our family is not in the best position financially. We cannot provide the proper dowry." "There will be no need for a dowry," Ian interrupted firmly. "If I have Claire, I need nothing else." The Duke's words left no room for debate. He informed them the wedding was already arranged for the following month. All preparations would be handled by him. The Marquis, speechless, could only nod. Ian turned back to Claire, his gaze softer now. He said gently, "I cannot wait until the day you stand by my side." Right there, before her family, who still struggled to believe what they were seeing. But when the Duke departed, Amelia's rage erupted. She lashed out, cornering her sister. "Why you?" she screamed, striking Claire across the face. "Why did it have to be you?" Her father, as always, remained passive. Her mother, as always, silent. Neither lifted a hand to protect Claire. And Claire, she endured. She always endured. For as long as she could remember, Amelia had been the cherished daughter, born healthy and adored. Claire, born after a difficult labor, a girl when her parents had longed for a son, was seen as nothing but a disappointment. Her mother's affection had never once reached her. And yet, even as Amelia's abuses grew worse over the following weeks, Claire held herself together. She had to. 1 month later, the wedding day arrived. Claire stood dressed as a bride, her calloused hands hidden beneath delicate gloves, her posture perfectly flawless despite the storm within. She had survived Amelia's cruelty. She had endured her mother's indifference. And now she walked into a future far brighter than anything her own home had ever given her. That night, after the vows were spoken and the festivities ended, Claire lay in her new chamber, exhaustion pressing down on her. For the first time in her life, she sank into a bed that was soft, warm, and safe, a room fit for a duchess. The chamber door creaked open. Duke Ian stepped inside, his lips curved with mischief. "My wife is already so bold. Climbing into bed alone?" he teased. Claire jumped to her feet, flustered. I'm sorry." Ian laughed softly, raising a hand. "I'm joking. Relax. From today onward, we'll be together for 1 year. Nothing more, nothing less." Claire lowered her head politely. "Then please take care of me. I'll do my best to fulfill my duties as your Duchess. And I hope this year will allow you to be with the one you truly love in the future." Ian chuckled again. "The way you call me husband, you make it sound as though we're newlyweds." But his tone softened when he gestured to the bed. "Rest here tonight. I'll stay in my office." Clay shook her head quickly. "No, please, I can sleep in the study. This is your room." But Ian's decision was firm. Not another word. Stay here. Only when she thanked him quietly did he finally step out. That night, lying in the lavish bed, Claire stared at the ceiling. She wondered Was it truly so wonderful to sleep beside someone you love? Perhaps one day someone might love her that way. The next morning, a knock rattled her door. "Your Grace, it's already past noon. Would you like to rest longer?" Claire sat up immediately. "No, I've rested enough." When she opened her wardrobe, the maid's eyes widened. "Is this all the clothing you brought?" "These are the only dresses I own," Claire admitted quietly. "Don't worry, I can manage dressing myself." The maid's lips pressed into a line. "And will you wear one of these today?" Claire tilted her head. "Is there a problem?" The maid didn't answer, but her disapproval was clear. To them, Claire wasn't a duchess, just a plain woman who somehow appeared at the Duke's side. Their respect was laced with bitterness. Even the butler introduced himself curtly, refusing to give his name. When Claire asked if he might guide her in managing the household, he dismissed her request entirely. "There is no need, my lady. Please remain in your room and rest." Claire realized then life here would not be easy. Still, she refused to remain idle. She had grown up with calloused hands, doing labor that most nobles would never endure. If no one would teach her, then she would learn the mansion herself. As she wandered the corridors, she overheard hushed voices. "Did you see her luggage? Only 5 tattered dresses? A poor noble. She's not fit for the Duke at all. She's probably here to steal his fortune." Claire's chest tightened, but she kept walking. If Amelia were in her place, she would have struck them down. In an instant, Claire chose silence. She always did. In the gardens, the air was fresh, the hedges trimmed perfectly. The estate was impeccable, perhaps thanks to the previous duchess. She regretted not being able to ask Ian's mother more about her duties before she left for a neighboring country. Her thoughts were interrupted by a splash of water. A young maid struggled with a mountain of laundry, her hands raw from scrubbing. "Is something wrong?" Claire asked gently. The girl flinched, bowing quickly. "I'm sorry, my lady. I was ordered to finish all of this, but I can't keep up." Claire smiled kindly. "Don't worry. I'll help you." The maid blinked in confusion. You will help me?" "Of course." "My name is Claire," she said simply. The maid hesitated, then bowed. "I may." Claire rolled up her sleeves. "Here, watch. If you step on the clothes when washing, it goes much faster. Like this." She demonstrated, stomping lightly on the fabric. May stared wide-eyed and then laughed softly as she joined in. And there they were, the Duchess of the house and a simple maid, side by side, stomping laundry in the sun. The garden echoed with laughter, an unusual sound in the ducal estate. Claire and the young maid, May, splashed water together as they pressed clothes with their feet, giggling like children. For Claire, it wasn't just about helping. It was a chance to understand how this household worked. "Does Madame Sarna decide who works where?" Claire asked casually. May nodded with a sigh. "Yes, my lady. I started here 6 months ago, and ever since, the head maid makes me do mountains of laundry every single day, more than anyone else." Claire frowned, but before she could say more, May's eyes widened in horror. The Duke was standing right behind them. Ian crossed his arms, brow raised. "I was looking for you, Claire, and what exactly are you doing out here?" Startled, Claire spun around and slipped on the wet stone, but before she could hit the ground, Ian caught her firmly in his arms. Later, back in her chambers after being fussed over by servants, Claire lowered her eyes. I'm sorry. I didn't expect you to return so soon." Ian leaned back with a chuckle. "I came early. Your new dresses arrived, and my colleagues insisted I spend more time at home, like a proper newlywed." His gaze softened. "But tell me again, what were you doing in the garden? You looked happy." Claire's cheeks burned. She hesitated, afraid he might think her unfit for her role as Duchess. But before she could answer, Madame Sarna stormed in, her tone sharp. "Your Grace, such behavior is unbecoming. As Duchess, you must avoid lowering yourself. It was my fault. interrupted May, bowing deeply. "The Duchess was only teaching me how to finish the laundry on time. I couldn't have done it alone." Claire's eyes widened. In her whole life, no one had ever spoken up for her. She looked at May, touched to her core. "That's true," Claire said firmly, "but May isn't at fault. She did nothing wrong." Sarna's lips tightened. "Then did you, madam, wash the clothes yourself? Such behavior stains the dignity of the ducal family." This time, Claire didn't shrink back. She straightened her shoulders. "That garden isn't accessible to outsiders. If everyone here stays quiet, then there is no problem. But if gossip spreads, then it means someone in this house is disloyal, and that person is unfit to remain here." The butler lowered his head. Even Sarna, usually so proud, had no answer. Anne's lips curved in a rare smile. It seems the matter is resolved. But Claire wasn't done. "There's something else. Today I wandered the mansion alone while everyone claimed to be busy. This estate is vast. There is always work to be done. Should I not try to help as well?" Her husband studied her with curiosity as she turned to the butler. "Tell me, who assigns the servants their tasks?" He gestured stiffly. "That would be Madame Sarna." Claire nodded. "Then starting tomorrow, someone else will take over that responsibility." Sarna paled. My lady, wait! Please, you don't understand. Do you call yourself competent when you dump an absurd amount of laundry onto a novice? You knew other maids should help once their duties were done, yet they idled about, gossiping in the halls. I saw it myself." The silence in the room was heavy until a servant entered, announcing the arrival of the tailor. Claire exhaled softly and turned to Ian. "I've taken up too much of your time, Your Grace." But Ian only smiled. "On the contrary, I'm glad to see I can trust you with the affairs of this house." As the servants filed out, Claire turned to May. "Stay." Then, facing Ian with determination, she asked, "May I keep her as my personal maid?" Ian arched a brow. "Wouldn't you prefer a veteran? Someone more experienced?" Claire shook her head. "No, I feel more comfortable with May." And when she smiled, genuinely, for the first time since her wedding, Ian was quietly taken aback. It had only been 3 days since their marriage, yet Claire was already proving she was neither passive nor weak. She was nothing like the woman he had imagined. In another corner of the kingdom, Duke Ian sat in his office, lost in thought, until a cheerful voice broke the silence. "So this is what a newlywed's glow looks like," teased Keith Fona, the king's younger brother. Ian raised a brow. "Are you saying I look foolish?" Keith lounged comfortably on the sofa, eyeing Ian with a smirk. "So this is what you look like glowing, huh? Careful, you shouldn't forget this is only a 1-year marriage contract." Ian leaned back in his chair, unbothered. "I'm not in love, Keith. I just find her far more interesting than I expected." Keith arched a brow. "Interesting? She looked like the quiet type on her wedding day. I half expected she'd spend her time tucked away with a book." Ian chuckled. "That's what I thought too, but I couldn't find her anywhere in the mansion until I went to the garden. There she was, barefoot, hem of her dress held up, teaching a maid how to wash clothes." Keith's eyes widened. "Barefoot? A noble woman?" "Exactly," Ian said with a laugh. "I've never seen anything like it. And do you know what else? She dismissed Sarna from her position without flinching." Keith let out a low whistle. "So she's braver than she looks. You'd better keep an eye on her. Who knows? Maybe she'll run away before your year is up." Ian shook his head, his voice steady. "No, I won't let anyone interfere with her. Not after what I've seen." Keith leaned forward, intrigued. "Now you've got me curious. I'd like to meet this unusual young lady myself." Back at the ducal mansion, new dresses had arrived. Ian explained gently, "I ordered some ready-made pieces for now. The tailor will take your proper measurements later. Perhaps you'd like to wear one tonight? We could have dinner together." Claire hesitated, worried she might ruin the fine fabric, but eventually she nodded. Very well. As she went to change, Ian lingered outside her chambers. Through the door, he overheard her voice. Please, May, handle these carefully. It's the first time I've ever had a brand new dress of my own. May gasped. But, my lady, you're from the Marquise family. Surely you've always had fine dresses? Claire shook her head softly. No, we were poor. All my life I remade my mother's and sister's old gowns. That's why I learned sewing so well. But this? Her voice trembled. This is mine. Just mine. Hearing her, Ian's heart tightened. She had accepted his gift with composure, yet she had hidden the depth of her feelings. He realized she always concealed more than she let show. The Duke smiled faintly to himself. Poor man, he didn't realize he was already falling. The next day, May appeared before Claire with tear-reddened eyes, apologizing. My lady, I spilled lunch while carrying it. There's nothing else prepared. Claire immediately understood. This was retaliation for Sarna's dismissal, but she refused to let May bear the blame. Don't worry, I ate enough earlier. Tea will be fine. May brightened, relieved, and hurried to make tea. Yet she noticed her maid's eyes again, hungry, tired. She softened. Sit with me, May. Let's drink together. The girl hesitated, shocked by such kindness, then nodded. As May nervously poured, Claire's heart stirred with memories. Her grandmother, the only one who had ever truly cared for her, used to serve her tea the same way. She lifted the cup, smiling warmly. It's perfect, not for the taste, but because you made it. May's lips trembled into a smile. For the first time, Claire felt she was not completely alone here. Later, the two walked through the gardens, Claire careful not to soil her new gown. May reassured her. Don't worry, my lady. If it stains, we can wash it again. Claire paused before a bed of scarlet roses. Their beauty stunned her. These must have been planted because the Duchess, your lord's mother, loved them so dearly. She reached toward the blossoms, but the sharp thorns pricked her finger. The sting jolted her thoughts. No matter how lovely these roses were, they reminded her of her reality. She was only a substitute, a temporary duchess, nothing more. But the household's silent rebellion was only beginning. With Ian constantly buried in work, the missing meals grew worse each day. Claire knew exactly what they were trying to do, pressure her into giving up her place in the mansion, and telling her husband wouldn't solve the problem as he would just fire the person responsible.
Claire had already made up her mind. She couldn't burden Ian with every little slight. Running to him each time would only worsen how the servants viewed her. Still, she couldn't ignore May's hollow eyes, her forced smile hiding the gnawing hunger. At breakfast, Claire's heart sank. For her, this was salvation, a chance to eat enough to last through the day. But May wasn't touching her plate. Ian noticed immediately. Is something wrong? Do you dislike the food? Claire's mind raced. If she revealed the truth, it would only stir trouble. So, she smiled gently. No, it's just, I can't eat much in the morning. Could I take the rest back to my room? The Duke nodded. Of course, I'll have the maids bring it. Claire quickly shook her head. No need, I'll carry it myself. As they walked the quiet hall together, Ian broke the silence. Have you grown used to the house? Claire offered a polite smile. Yes, the garden is especially beautiful. But, she hesitated, then added softly, you work so late every night. You should rest more. Ian gave an awkward little laugh. When I focus, I lose track of time. Claire thought to herself, he doesn't need to apologize. This is only a contract marriage after all. But aloud, she said kindly, please don't push yourself too hard. Back in her room, Claire set the bread in front of May. Help me with this. I can't finish it all alone. May protested, but hunger betrayed her. Tears welled up as she took a bite. Watching her, Claire's chest ached. She knew this wasn't sustainable. They needed a solution.
That night, when her own stomach growled in the darkness, Claire whispered, "I can't just sit here. I'll cook." May blinked in shock. You know how to cook?" Claire's lips curved into a small smile. "A little. Enough to keep us from starving." The kitchen was dim, lit only by the moonlight spilling through the window. Claire rolled up her sleeves and gathered scraps of ingredients. Soon, the pot bubbled with a simple stew, the aroma filling the cold air. May stared, wide-eyed. You really can cook." Claire stirred the pot, her voice low. "Back home, Amelia once kept me from eating for 3 days. I thought I'd collapse, so one night I waited for everyone to fall asleep. I stole whatever leftovers I could find and taught myself to cook. I cried the whole time, but I survived." May's throat tightened. "My lady." Claire's gaze softened. "That's why I understand your fear. The loneliness, the hunger. But as long as we're together, May, you'll never go hungry again." Her voice carried into a gentle song. Words improvised as she stirred, like a lullaby to soothe their tired hearts. May listened, captivated, her eyes shining. "You sing beautifully, but if you became a singer, wouldn't the Duke be sad to lose you?" Claire laughed softly, shaking her head, but before she could answer, a low chuckle echoed behind them. Startled, Claire spun around. This time she didn't stumble, but her heart skipped all the same. There stood Ian, leaning casually against the doorframe, amusement dancing in his eyes. He tilted his head, smiling. "Well, this is quite the sight." And for the first time, Claire realized he wasn't laughing at her. He was laughing in wonder. Feigning composure, Claire smiled faintly. "You came home early tonight." But inside, her heart thudded nervously. Why does he always appear at the worst possible time? She dipped her head apologetically. "Forgive me for not greeting you properly. I was just cooking." Ian's brow arched with amusement. "Cooking? I could tell from the way you were smiling." He leaned a little closer, teasing. "But tell me, don't we have cooks in this house?" Claire swallowed, searching for the right words. "Yes, but you weren't here, so I decided to prepare something myself." May jumped in quickly, desperate to shield her mistress. "We tried to stop her, Your Grace, but the madam insisted." Claire shook her head. "No, it was my decision. I hadn't eaten since morning, and the hunger got the better of me. I used the kitchen without permission." The Duke's smile vanished. His voice dropped. "You haven't eaten since morning? Why didn't you have lunch?" Feigning innocence, Claire tilted her head. "Lunch? Do they usually serve lunch in this house?" The Duke froze, and in that instant, it hit him. She had only been eating during the meals they shared together. The rest of the time, she was left to starve. His eyes swept the servants gathered nearby. "Is this true?" Silence, not a single word. Before his temper flared, Claire cut in softly. "The food will grow cold. Perhaps we can talk about this after dinner?" Reluctantly, Ian agreed, and they sat together. He poked at his plate, trying to lighten the air. "The steak is thick." Claire almost choked back a laugh. A moment later, he tasted the soup and added, "But this is very good." She shook her head. "You don't need to flatter me. If it's tasteless, you can say so." His gaze lingered on her. "It's delicious, because you made it with your own hands." Her cheeks flushed. She realized then he must have seen her in the kitchen, cooking and singing like a carefree girl. Embarrassment flooded her, but he simply added, "You looked happy." That night, Ian finally understood the truth. His colleagues had teased him all morning, telling him to act like a proper newlywed and go home early. He was glad he had, because if not, he would have remained blind to what she was enduring. After the meal, his voice hardened again. "Who is responsible for the Duchess not receiving her lunch?" The servants exchanged anxious looks. One finally stammered, It was Annie." Annie was dragged forward, trembling. "Am I to be dismissed, Your Grace?" Claire surprised everyone. She stepped closer to Ian. "If I may, Instead of dismissal, I'd like Annie assigned to me. Ian frowned. Assigned to you? Claire's eyes gleamed with quiet cunning. Isn't serving someone you despise the worst punishment? A slow smile tugged at his lips. He didn't fully grasp her intent, but he agreed. The next day, at court, Keith noticed immediately. You're in a suspiciously good mood. Last night, I waited for you to drink, but you'd already gone home. What happened? Ian leaned back, a rare softness crossing his face. When I arrived, Claire was in the kitchen, cooking, singing. He paused, almost lost in the memory. It was magical. Keith laughed. Cooking? Your wife is truly something else. I've never seen anyone take a role so seriously. Not even a contract wife would go that far. But Ian shook his head. No, it wasn't just that. It's my fault. I should have realized sooner. The servants weren't feeding her, and instead of complaining, she endured it. She cooked for herself. Keith blinked. And you didn't fire the culprit? Ian admitted. I tried, but Claire stopped me. She said the maid was probably just too loyal to the family, not malicious, and she asked to have the girl serve her directly. Keith let out a low whistle. Your wife is extraordinary. Even while being mistreated, she still thinks of the bigger picture. Ian smiled faintly, remembering her laughter in the kitchen. Yes, she's far more fascinating than I imagined. Keith leaned back with a smirk. So, when do you plan on introducing this remarkable wife of yours? Ian's eyes softened at the thought. Perhaps at the next banquet. Now that her dress has arrived, it would be the perfect occasion. He didn't say it out loud, but his thoughts betrayed him. At first, I thought she was just the most suitable candidate, nothing more. But after marrying her, everything feels different. She hums while washing clothes, sings while cooking, and smiles through hardships. Yet sometimes, there's a smile that feels like she's hiding herself away from the world. That quiet strength fascinated him. That evening, when he returned home, Claire was waiting at the entrance. Not as the contract bride, not as the quiet daughter of a struggling family, but as a wife welcoming her husband home. Ian froze for a moment, his chest tightening. For once, the Duke, famed for his composure, found himself speechless. He finally cleared his throat. I came back early again. Also, in 2 weeks, there will be a banquet. Would you attend with me? Claire bowed her head politely, holding his coat. Of course, it will be my first public duty as your wife. But when she was alone, her heart pounded with nerves. A banquet wasn't just a gathering, it was the stage of noble society. And as Duchess, she would be expected to dance.
The problem? Claire had never learned. That night, she tossed and turned. How can I possibly manage? Amelia had studied for years under a private tutor. But Claire? She had only watched from the sidelines, invisible and unwanted. Still, she couldn't afford to humiliate her husband at such an important event. She needed a partner, and quickly. The next morning, after seeing Ian off, Claire noticed a maid carrying his clothes from the day before. She asked for them instead and hurried to her room. Using the Duke's coat and trousers, she crafted a makeshift figure, a sheet doll. And just like that, she had a dance partner. Clutching the doll's stiff arms, she giggled at the absurdity. In one pocket, she found an ornate pen, clearly forgotten by Ian. She placed it carefully on her desk, promising to return it later. But for now, practice came first. She closed her eyes and tried to recall Amelia's lessons, swaying clumsily in time with the chirping of birds outside her window. Her steps were awkward, her rhythm uncertain, but for once, Claire didn't care. She was happy. And as always, her timing was unfortunate. The Duke entered without warning. Claire? Startled, she spun around, still holding the doll. In her panic, she tripped. Ian lunged forward to catch her, and they both tumbled to the floor, Claire landing right in his lap.
Her face went crimson. I'm so sorry. Are you hurt? Ian chuckled softly, brushing off the fall. No, I train far harder than that every day. He reached for the pen on her desk. I came back because I forgot this. But what exactly were you doing just now? Claire's cheeks burned. She bowed her head. Since you invited me to the banquet, I wanted to practice. I've never been taught how to dance before. Not once. The Duke blinked. Never? Not even at home? She shook her head. No one ever asked me to dance. I thought, if I practiced with this doll, I might at least avoid embarrassing you. Her voice trembled. If you find me unfit, I'll understand if you want to cancel the contract. Ian's jaw tightened. He stood, then reached out his hand to her. His tone was firm, yet warm. Enough. You won't practice with dolls anymore. From now on, you'll practice with me. Her eyes widened. But you're always so busy. Then I'll make time. His gaze locked with hers. 1 hour, every morning, before breakfast. No excuses. Claire's lips parted, stunned. She had expected scolding, maybe even rejection. But instead, the Duke himself was offering his hand, literally and figuratively. The next morning, Ian promised they would begin their lessons at dawn. We'll need to be in sync for the year ahead, he said, his voice firm yet kind. Before leaving for work, he glanced at the desk. Thank you for keeping my pen safe. I'll see you tonight. Once the door closed behind him, Claire pressed her burning face into her hands. Why does he always catch me in the most ridiculous moments? Dancing with a dummy of all things. Hugging the cloth figure against her chest, she muttered, "This is all your fault, making me this embarrassed." The faint scent of the Duke still lingered on his clothes, making her cheeks glow crimson. Later that day, Claire requested the maids to set tea in the rose garden. The air smelled sweet with blossoms, the roses glowing under the sunlight. For a moment, she felt privileged, grateful to sit in such a place sipping tea in peace. But her serenity was cut short by a sharp voice. Annie, now working personally for Claire, was scolding May for preparing the tea poorly. Claire, trying to calm the storm, asked May gently, "Would you mind fetching us some appetizers to go with this?" Once May left, Claire turned to Annie. "That was a little harsh, wasn't it?" But Annie's reply was cool, measured. If she is to last here, she must learn properly. I don't correct her to be cruel, but because she needs to improve. Claire studied her maid for a moment. Beneath that icy tone was something else. Concern, perhaps even care. She smiled softly. "Then, even if you dislike me, please continue teaching May. You're strict, but you're also very skilled. With you guiding her, she'll grow into a fine maid. And when my time here ends, I'll know the two of you will be all right." For the first time, Annie's cold expression faltered, if only slightly. Changing the subject, Claire asked hesitantly, "Do you know where I could buy makeup?" Annie blinked, stunned. "Madam, have you truly never used it? Not even before the wedding?" Claire shook her head. "I never saw the need. I always went without. The truth is," she thought bitterly, "that Amelia convinced me it wouldn't matter, that I'd never stand out no matter what I wore." Annie exhaled, almost in disbelief. "Then we'll need to buy an entire set. But don't worry, the Duke left no restrictions on your spending. You need not ask permission." Before leaving, Annie glanced at Claire curiously. "Are you sure you're comfortable letting someone who once bullied you go through your belongings?" Claire's answer was calm, almost weary. "It doesn't matter. Someone who betrays their friends so easily wouldn't bother plotting against the one who took them in." Not long after, May returned with flushed cheeks. "Where's Annie, madam?" Claire replied lightly, "I asked her to look over my things and make sure I'm not missing anything for the ball." But suddenly, Claire froze, realization striking her like lightning. The dummy! Annie would find it! Heart racing, she rushed back to her room. Too late. Annie was standing before her wardrobe, staring. "What is this?" she asked flatly. Before Claire could stammer out a word, May peeked in and gasped, "Wait, aren't those the Duke's clothes from the day before?" Claire's entire face turned crimson. Words failed her. The two maids exchanged glances, their expressions softening into something mischievous. "So this is how you miss him," Maid teased gently. Claire buried her face in her hands, too mortified to correct them. "No, it's for practice, for the banquet." But explaining herself now would only make it worse. Meanwhile, in the training grounds, the Duke was cutting through the air with his sword, sweat dripping from his temple. His muscles rippled with each movement, forged from years of discipline. He remembered being only 18 when he joined the Order of Knights. From that day on, his blade became his companion, his duty his purpose. Yet, recently, he found his thoughts wandering towards the quiet, determined woman waiting for him at home. Ian's blade sliced through the cool morning air, his movement sharp yet fluid, the rhythm of training grounding him. Once, his efforts had been recognized by the highest ranks, so much so that he became a royal guard knight to the crown prince. Even after inheriting the ducal title, he continued to serve both duties, torn between two heavy responsibilities. But in truth, he felt he was failing at both. At 22, burdened by the weight of inadequacy, Ian laid down his post as a royal guard knight. Yet even now, whenever his mind clouded with doubt, the training ground remained his refuge. "Up early again, I see." Keith's familiar voice broke the silence. Ian lowered his blade, spotting the king's younger brother strolling in with his usual amused grin. "I only came here because I heard you'd be training," Keith teased. "These days, you seem to have the most interesting stories." Ian wiped the sweat from his brow. "I don't have anything to tell." Keith arched a brow. "Maybe you'd feel better telling me than beating yourself to exhaustion with that sword." For a long moment, Ian resisted, but eventually, with a quiet sigh, he gave in. "It's about Claire." Keith tilted his head. "Did you two fight?" "No," Ian replied, though a faint smile tugged at his lips. "I returned home yesterday after forgetting my pen and my clothes. When I entered her chambers, I found her dancing." Keith chuckled. "Dancing? What's odd about that?" "She was dancing with a doll," Ian explained. "A doll made of nothing more than sheets, dressed in my clothes." His eyes softened at the memory. "She looked genuinely happy." Keith blinked, surprised.
My sister would never dance without a hall full of men at her feet. They were raised very differently, Ian admitted. I never looked too deeply into Claire's life before our marriage. I didn't want to get attached. But now... His voice trailed off. Keith leaned back against the post. "She sounds more charming than the woman who strung you along for 10 years. His tone was half serious, half mocking. Ian stiffened. The name Sophia echoed silently in his chest. The princess. The girl he had loved since childhood. The one he believed destiny had promised him. But at 14, Sophia had abandoned the kingdom under the guise of study, traveling freely while the years slipped by. Ian had waited, certain she would return. Now, the king himself had decreed her return within the year. Keith's voice cut through his thoughts like a blade. "Face it, Ian, you've been clinging to something that doesn't exist. She's probably long forgotten you while enjoying the world outside." Ian said nothing, though the wound was clear in his eyes. The next morning, after breakfast, Claire and Ian began their dance lessons. From the very start, Claire's struggles were obvious. Her steps were clumsy, her movements stiff. "I'm certain I was born without the gift of dancing," she sighed frustrated. "Unlike you, I can't imagine you being bad at anything." Ian shook his head, his gaze patient. "You're too focused on where your feet will land. Stop thinking so hard. Just feel the flow." "But I don't want to step on your foot," she protested. A faint smile tugged at his lips. "That might not be such a bad thing. If men don't want their feet stepped on, they won't ask you to dance." Claire laughed nervously. "If it doesn't get better, you'll be the one suffering for a year." "I can endure it," he said simply. "You don't need to worry about me." But Claire did worry. She wasn't his true wife, only a stand-in. Every mistake, every flaw, weighed on her more heavily than it should. Just days ago, Annie had presented Ian with a long list of things Claire lacked: dresses, shoes, accessories. Without hesitation, Ian had purchased everything,
delivering them directly to their room. Even if Annie hadn't pointed it out, he told her, "I would have been upset knowing I neglected you." His words had stunned her, and yet it was true. Annie had a keen eye, and the two maids Claire kept close, May and Annie, were both skilled and loyal. Back in the practice hall, Claire's gaze slipped downward again, fixating on her own feet. Ian sighed. This wasn't working. Stepping closer, he lifted her chin gently, his touch steady yet commanding. "Look into my eyes," he instructed. "From now on, you'll dance while looking at me, and talking to me." Claire's breath caught. His deep gaze locked with hers, his voice low, smooth, impossible to disobey. Her heart pounded like a trapped bird, and the Duke, oh, he knew exactly what he was doing, pretending not to notice the effect he had on her, while secretly savoring every second of it. The lesson began with hesitant steps. Claire glanced down at her feet, her nerves getting the better of her. What do we even talk about while dancing?" she asked, her voice small. Ian gave a faint smile. "It's normal to have light conversation. Small talk. It helps keep the rhythm." He guided her gently through the motions, his voice steady. "So, have you gotten used to life here in the mansion?" Claire bit her lip. "Yes, everything's fine." Then, with a flicker of guilt, she added, "I know about the food, but it was my choice not to tell you. Please don't worry." But Ian's brow furrowed. "Even so, you suffered because of it." "I'm used to going hungry," she admitted quietly. The words struck him harder than she realized. He tried to mask the storm in his chest, but his expression betrayed the worry he couldn't quite hide. To steer away from her own painful past, Claire asked softly, "What kind of woman? What was the one you love?" The air grew heavy. Realizing she had touched something too raw, she rushed to change the subject. But Ian shook his head. "It's fine." He drew a deep breath. "Sophia. She's a year younger than me. Always had a fiery personality. Honestly, if she had been born a man, she'd thrive even more. Because of our families, I was the only match considered suitable. We were engaged as children." Claire's eyes softened. "You must have been perfect together since the very beginning." Ian let out a humorless laugh. "Perfect, perhaps, but she left 10 years ago. And I waited." His gaze drifted past her, into memories he couldn't let go of. Claire's chest tightened. "You've waited a whole decade. That isn't strange. It just shows how deeply you cared." He exhaled slowly, then muttered, "Perhaps, as a friend once told me, I simply hadn't met the right person yet." The words startled Claire, and she wondered if he even realized what he had just admitted. Then he shook his head. "Forgive me. It was foolish of me to drag you into such a story. I never should have involved you." But Claire cut him off. "No, it was my choice." Her voice grew firmer as she revealed pieces of her own pain. "I wasn't raised with love. I grew up hungry more often than not, doing the chores of servants when my parents looked away. My sister, she was the one they adored. Everything was given to her, even when there was nothing left. For me," she paused, her voice trembling, "I never dreamed of a happy marriage. I always knew they would marry me off to some greedy merchant or a man much older than me. Those were the only futures I was allowed to imagine." Her foot slipped. Pain flared from a blister, and she stumbled, straight into Ian's chest. His arms caught her before she fell, and suddenly her heart was pounding wildly against him. She pulled back just enough to finish, her eyes shimmering. "That's why, no matter what anyone says, to me, you are a hero." The words pierced him like an arrow. Heat rushed to his face, climbing from his neck to the tips of his ears. He, Duke Ian, was blushing like a boy. Claire's eyes widened in alarm. "Your Grace, you're red everywhere. Are you unwell?" I'm fine," he stammered, turning his face away. "No, you're not," she cried. "I'll fetch a doctor immediately." "Claire, wait!" But it was too late. She darted out of the hall in a panic. Moments later, a bewildered physician was ushered in. After a quick examination, he concluded calmly, "The Duke is perfectly healthy." Ian dismissed him with a tight smile, but his ears were still burning. He left soon after for work, leaving Claire both flustered and confused. Back in her chambers, she sulked to the makeshift doll dressed in his clothes. It's all your fault," she scolded the fabric figure, cheeks hot. "Why do you make me feel so embarrassed?" Still, she couldn't linger. The butler had left stacks of documents for her to review. Mansion accounts, duties, details of the household. She threw herself into the work, hiding her own restless heart. Later that evening, a knock came at her door. Claire blinked, wondering who it could be. It was the head chef holding a tray piled high with warm, fragrant muffins. He bowed awkwardly. "My lady, these are an apology for everything that has happened." But Claire noticed the hesitation. These weren't elegant confections fit for a duchess. They were heavy, rustic, and clumsy, nothing noble ladies would serve at their tables. But yet, to Claire, the gesture spoke louder than polished silver. The tray the chef handed over looked plain. No decorations, no sugared flowers, no elegant touches, just simple, round muffins. At first glance, they seemed almost insulting for a duchess. But Claire's lips curved into a soft smile. "Perhaps this is exactly right for me." Her sister used to mock her endlessly, saying she'd never once tasted a noblewoman's dessert. And now here it was, humble, unadorned, but warm and fragrant. The sweet aroma curled up to her nose, scattering her doubts. Claire took a bite, and her eyes widened. Delicious. Unable to keep it to herself, she pushed the basket towards her maids.
Go on, try them. The chef baked all of these as an apology. May's eyes lit up at the smell, while Annie frowned in suspicion. My lady, are you sure it's proper to accept this? A plain offering like this might carry hidden insult. Claire only chuckled. It's fine. He's prepared meals faithfully since that day. I'll take it as sincerity. But the basket was overflowing, far too many for the three of them to finish. Annie, ever practical, suggested, "Perhaps you could take some to His Grace? It would be a good excuse to visit him at work, and you could see with your own eyes that he's well." The thought made Claire's heart flutter. Visit him? At his post? She worried she might disturb him, but the idea of bringing him a gift, her first real gesture as a wife, was too tempting to resist. She agreed. Moments later, she was seated in a carriage, the basket of muffins balanced on her lap. But as the city blurred past the window, unease crept in. She hadn't brought a maid, didn't want to trouble them. Now she wondered, will his colleagues accept me? Or will they see me only as the temporary duchess everyone whispers about? When the carriage stopped at the palace gates, the coachman bowed stiffly. "I won't be waiting for you, madam. Inform the Duke to arrange another carriage for your return." Claire blinked. "Oh, wait, what?" But before she could protest, the man snapped the reins and was gone. Drawing a steadying breath, Claire walked up to the guard at the gate. "Good afternoon. I'm from the Duchy of Eder. I'd like to deliver something to my husband, the Duke." The guard's eyes flicked over her, polite at first, then dismissive. "Entry permit?" Claire froze. "Permit?" Without an entry permit or direct royal order, no one enters. Surely the Duke told you this. His tone dripped with disdain. Claire clutched the basket tighter. "I didn't warn him I was coming, but if it's not allowed, could you perhaps deliver this for me?" He barked a laugh. "Not possible. Duke Ian receives piles of gifts every day. Orders are to reject them all. I can't take yours either." His gaze sharpened, mocking. "You're not the first woman to show up claiming ties to him. Some say they're relatives, some lovers. But wife?" He smirked. "That's a new one." Claire's chin lifted. "I am his wife." He shook his head. "No. The Duchess of Eder is supposed to be dull, forgettable. Yet, look at you. You're far too beautiful. Not at all like the rumors." Claire smiled faintly, choosing silence. So my new dress changed their perception at least. But reality pressed in. Her carriage was gone. Returning on foot would take hours. She asked quietly, "Then,
May I wait here at the gate?" The guard scoffed. "It's your time to waste, but don't get your hopes up. The Duke just got married. He won't betray his bride, not during the honeymoon. Best give up now." Still, Claire stood. Minutes stretched into hours. One passed, then another half. The sun slipped lower, shadows lengthening at her feet. Finally, the guard returned from his break and stopped short. "You're still here?" His brows shot up. "I didn't think you'd last this long. You've got persistence, I'll give you that. More than the other girls who come chasing after him." His voice dropped into something crueler. "But you should know, the Duke's marriage is a contract. Everyone says it will end in a year. High society already whispers, why else would he choose the strangest woman among the nobles?" The words cut deep, sharper than a slap. Claire's fingers trembled around the basket, but she held her ground, her face calm. Inside, though, she thought, "If only you knew. I am that strange woman, and I will endure this year, no matter what." The gossip at the gate only grew sharper. The guard, lowering his voice as though sharing some grand secret, muttered, "They say the Duke was blackmailed by Marquis Maurice, forced to pay your family's debts. That's why he married you." Claire's fingers tightened around the basket, but she stayed composed. Deep down, she was almost relieved. At least the rumor isn't that he despises me. But the man wasn't done. What's truly strange is this. Duke Ian, a former knight, has never introduced his wife to anyone. Do you know what that means? It's tradition. A man in love will present his bride proudly. If it were me, I'd show her to every guard who trains with me. Because they're my family. But your Duke, he smirked. He hides you. Must be a contract marriage. Probably embarrassed for people to see you. His words stung like thorns. Still, Claire's posture remained steady, her face calm. The guard leaned closer, steadying her. "But you carry yourself like a duchess. Any knight would line up to escort you. You deserve that much." Claire forced a soft smile. "I don't know if that should make me happy or very sad." Before more venom could drip from his mouth, the man suddenly stiffened. His posture snapped straight, and his hand over his chest. Your Majesty." Claire turned, startled, and saw golden eyes watching her with amused curiosity. Recognition flickered. She had seen him before, at her wedding. The guard stammered, "This lady claims to be the Duke's wife." The stranger's lips curved into a knowing smile. "So this is her." Claire lowered her gaze respectfully. "My name is Claire Maurice. No, Claire Etter." The man chuckled softly. "That explains it. No wonder I looked familiar." The guard's face drained of color. "Etter? The Duchess?" His knees nearly buckled. "I am Keith," the man said warmly. "Ian's old friend and the king's younger brother." Claire blinked. The prince himself? Here? At the gate reserved for royalty? He explained casually, "I heard there was a woman waiting here, insisting she was Ian's wife. I came to see for myself. Didn't imagine it would actually be his wife." His golden eyes glimmered with amusement. "Forgot your entry permit, didn't you?" Claire flushed. "It seems I forgot. I didn't even know one was required." Keith chuckled. "Come, I'll take you to him. Don't trouble yourself. This place is like my second home." Behind them, the guard stuttered. "She's truly the Duke's wife?" Keith answered with a grin. "The one and only." Claire felt the poor man's shame and offered a gentle smile. "You don't need to apologize. What you said was mostly true, and I didn't have the permit, so you were right." She held out a muffin. "Here, as thanks for keeping me company." The guard nearly choked on his own breath. The Duchess of Etter offering him a sweet? He bowed so low his forehead nearly brushed the ground. Keith, meanwhile, burst into laughter. "You're truly one of a kind, Lady Claire." Claire tilted her head in confusion. "Did I say something strange?" He only laughed harder. As they walked through the palace gates together, Claire murmured, "I'm glad I met you today. Otherwise, I might still be rotting away at the gate." Keith grinned. "Then let's call it fate. I can't believe I met you before the banquet." Claire nodded politely. She knew very well Keith was not just the king's younger brother. He was one of Ian's closest friends, and together they were the most promising young nobles in all of high society. Even she, who never cared for gossip, had heard of them. Ian was respected, disciplined. Keith was surrounded by endless rumors of romance, though none ever turned into scandal. Keith studied her with a sly smile. "Ian's spoken of you, you know. No need to be so formal. Speak to me freely." But Claire shook her head. "That would be rude. You are royalty." He leaned closer. "For a year, you'll be Duchess of Eder. That makes us almost equals, doesn't it?" Her heart skipped. Does he know about the contract? Or was he only repeating the rumors, like the guard? She swallowed, then asked softly, "So, you believe we'll divorce in a year?" His smile faded into something gentler. "If you do, I'll help you." Claire blinked. "Help me? You'd give me a job if I were abandoned?" Keith burst into laughter, the sound echoing in the marble corridor. "Not exactly the kind of help I meant, but I did hear you can cook and wash clothes." At that moment, Claire finally realizes the prince must already know everything about her, Ian, and the truth of their contract. Softly, she remarks, "You must be very close to my husband." Keith smiled knowingly. "We've been friends for 20 years.
Ian tells me everything." Before he can continue, Claire interrupts with a gentle laugh. "I suppose I envy you then. You have someone you can confide in. Well, I have no one." The prince pauses, taken aback. He expected irritation, maybe even anger at Ian's loose tongue, but instead, Claire shows no bitterness, only honesty. To Keith, this makes her all the more remarkable. Meanwhile, inside his office, Ian is buried in work, but his thoughts drift to Claire. She's getting better at dancing, he muses. That's good, of course, and yet he finds himself missing the way she used to look up at him, apologetic and flustered after stepping on his foot. His daydream is interrupted by a knock. A colleague steps in with a file in hand. "Forgive me, Duke. You didn't answer, so I came in. I have the report you requested, about Claire Maurice." Ian accepts it in silence. The man eyes him curiously. "Why investigate her again? You already looked into the Morris household before." Ian exhales. "Because after what I've seen, I had to know more. She never even learned to dance. That means she was never properly raised as a noblewoman. She must have been mistreated." The colleague nods gravely. Her grandmother was the only one who cared for her, but she died when Claire was 10. Then, lowering his voice, he adds, "By the way, there's a rumor spreading. Apparently a lady is outside claiming to be your wife." Ian's brows furrow. Even after marriage, his fame draws this kind of trouble. He thinks to himself, if only I could introduce Claire properly, this nonsense would stop. But, for her sake, for the contract's sake, she would never come here. And yet, fate has other plans. As the colleague leaves, he nearly collides with Prince Keith entering the room, his grin wide. "Special delivery," Keith announces. And behind him, Claire steps in, clutching a basket, bowing slightly. "Forgive the intrusion." Ian freezes. Of all the people he expected to see here today, she was not one of them. Keith teases, "What's with that expression, Ian? Shouldn't you be glad your wife came to see you?" Claire offers a small, nervous smile. "I only came to deliver some sweets. I'll be leaving now." Ian finally speaks. "That must have been heavy. You should have asked someone to carry it for you." He doesn't know. She had waited outside for 2 whole hours, basket in hand. Still, he thanks her softly. "It's good timing.
everyone was about to take a break, we can share them. The colleague introduces himself, bowing politely. It's an honor to meet you, Duchess. Claire curtsies gracefully. The pleasure is mine. And thank you for looking after my husband. Both men exchange a glance, struck by her beauty and her quiet elegance. Almost too quickly, the colleague takes the basket from Ian's hands. I'll see to it that these are shared. With a sly tug, he drags Keith with him, leaving the couple alone. Before going, Claire turns to the prince. Your Highness, thank you for your help today. It was a pleasure speaking with you. Keith chuckles warmly, then departs. Now, in the quiet of the office, Claire bows her head. I apologize for coming without notice. But Ian shakes his head. No, it's fine. I wasn't that busy. But tell me, is it true you waited at the gate? She hesitates, then nods. His expression tightens. I'm sorry, I didn't realize. You must have waited so long. I'll have an entry permit arranged for you immediately. Claire waves her hand gently. It's all right. Thanks to His Highness, I was able to deliver the sweets after all. Anne studies her as she speaks. Since they began practicing together, she's been showing a spectrum of emotions, expressions he never saw when they first met. Back then, she was quiet, reserved, almost unreadable. But now she's alive before him. Claire smiles faintly, changing the subject. The cupcakes were very good. Claire takes another bite of the warm, fluffy cupcake, and her eyes widen. She had never eaten anything this delicious before. Ian notices the sparkle in her expression and can't help but smile. If you'd like, I can have them prepared for you every day. But Claire quickly shakes her head. That would be too much work for the kitchen staff. Besides, I could never finish them all. Ian leans back in thought, his gaze softening. Then perhaps I'll take you to the sweet shop my mother adorned. You should see it, the shelves overflowing with cakes and pastries. I'd like to see your face light up when you walk in. For a moment, he drifts into his own imagination, picturing Claire's joy. Meanwhile, Claire worries silently. Maybe she shouldn't have come here. What if she distracted him from work? What if she was a burden? He's so considerate, he would never say so, even if she asked. But before she can dwell on it, Ian interrupts her thoughts. Would you mind if I introduced you to everyone? Surprised, Claire smiles shyly. Not at all. It would be a pleasure. He rises, offering his hand. She takes it, and together they step into the larger room. All eyes turn as the Duke announces, "This is my wife, Claire." Claire bows gracefully. "Thank you all for looking after my husband." Murmurs ripple through the group. Astonishment. This woman looks nothing like the dull, lifeless duchess the rumors spoke of. She is refined, beautiful, and undeniably warm. The men thank her for the sweets, praising how delicious they were. Then one of them chuckles. "Since the Duchess came all this way, you two should spend some time together after work. Besides, Duke, you were in the infirmary this morning." Claire's heart jumps. Without thinking, she rushes closer and places a hand on Ian's forehead. "Are you sick? Do you have a fever?" Realizing her sudden boldness, she pulls back, flustered. "I'm sorry, I was just worried." The room falls into sudden silence before one of his colleagues grins. "Well, if she came out of worry, then you'd better let her take care of you." Ian, embarrassed, clears his throat. "Were you really that worried about me?" Claire nods gently. "You didn't seem well this morning. I couldn't help it." Something softens in his eyes. "Then forgive me for making you worry and for making you wait to see me." The others exchange knowing looks. The tension between them is obvious. Everyone's thinking the same thing, just kiss already. But Claire, lost in her own thoughts, convinces herself that he's only behaving this way because people are watching. Later, as they leave the palace, Claire sighs with relief. "It was nice meeting your colleagues. They're all very kind." Anne nods, then frowns slightly. "Where did you leave the carriage?" Claire admits softly, "The coachman dropped me off and left." His expression hardens. He always rides by horse, and everyone knows that. To leave her stranded? Unacceptable. Claire tries to calm him. I'm sure he didn't mean any harm. Let's not dwell on it. She quickly changes the subject. Where are we going now? Not the main gate, Ian replies, leading her away. She recalls the guard's words and ventures. The man at the gate said many women still come to see you, bringing gifts. Ian looks straight ahead, feigning indifference. Next time, I'll make sure everyone knows you don't need an entry permit. That way, you can visit me whenever you want. Her heart skips. For a contract husband, he is far too kind, and yet the warmth in his voice fills her with a happiness she can't deny. In the royal carriage, Claire nervously asks, "Are you sure it's all right to use this carriage?" Ian assures her, "It belongs to my best friend. No one will mind." Grateful, she smiles. "Thank you for arranging it. I've never ridden a horse before, and honestly, I was afraid." "Then one day I'll teach you," Ian replies softly. His tone hardens again as he adds, "And when we get home, I'll deal with the servants, the coachman who abandoned you, and the matter with the cupcakes." Claire places a hand over his arm, gently urging, "Please, just report the incident. Don't punish them harshly. It's better for the future." He hesitates but nods, though you can tell he's still angry.
She thinks to herself how astonishing it is, how fiercely he defends her, even though she's only a substitute wife. When they arrive at the mansion, the staff lines up. Claire steps forward before Ian can act. "Call the one who prepared the sweets today." The head chef nervously approaches. Claire's gaze is calm, but piercing. "Do you know why you've been summoned?" The man bows quickly. "Forgive me, madam. I thought you preferred simple sweets. I meant no offense." But Claire knows. She never said any such thing. Claire studies the head chef in silence, her thoughts sharp. Why go through all the trouble of preparing something so plain? Was it truly guilt? Or simply another way to belittle me? Or worse, a ploy to unite others against me by making me the common enemy? Finally, she speaks. "You're mistaken." The chef stiffens, bracing for punishment. I'm sorry, madam. I didn't mean..." But Claire interrupts gently, her tone calm and composed. "I didn't summon you to scold you. I called you to thank you." The man blinks in shock, struggling to process her words. Claire continues with quiet authority. "Your sweets were appreciated by everyone today, and I believe that was your intention, wasn't it? To make enough so they could be shared. Besides, without frosting, they were easy to eat while working. It was thoughtful." Even Ian, standing beside her, nods in agreement. That's true. Claire turns to her husband. "Tell me, what does the Eater family usually do to reward good work?" Ian smirks faintly. "A salary bonus, of course. That's the tradition." "Then let it be so," Claire says with finality. "Chef, continue setting a good example for the others." The chef bows, utterly stunned by her graciousness. Claire slips her hand around Ian's arm with a soft smile. "Now, you should rest. We wouldn't want you catching another fever." Was she pretending, or was that subtle affection slipping through? Even she couldn't be sure. Inside the mansion, Ian watches her with quiet satisfaction. "What is it?" Claire asks, curious. "I didn't expect you to praise the chef like that. Your actions always surprise me. But tell me, why reward him publicly, even knowing his intentions weren't pure?" Her eyes soften, but her words are steady. "Because I rewarded the result, not the intention." His brow furrows. "Claire, sometimes you speak as though none of this concerns you, but listen to me. I may have asked you to play the role of Duchess, but I never want you to suffer in silence. If you are in trouble, tell me, immediately." Her heart stirs at his words, warmth pressing at the edges of her carefully guarded walls. She smiles. "All right, but for now, you should rest. That's why we came home early, isn't it?" As she turns to leave, Ian calls her back and hands her a small jar. "What is this?" she asks. "A cream," he explains, "for calloused hands. There's enough here to last you a long time." His voice softens. "Use it, please." Claire cradles the jar as though it were the rarest of treasures, her chest tightening. He excuses himself to take a bath, leaving her alone with the gift.
Later in her room, May and Annie find Claire gazing at the jar with uncharacteristic tenderness. "My lady, what are you looking at so fondly?" May asks. Claire smiles softly. "It's a hand cream. My husband gave it to me." She knows her calloused hands don't suit a duchess. He must have noticed and worried. The thought makes her heart ache with an emotion she doesn't dare name. "He must love you very much," May says innocently. For Claire, the cream is more than just a gift. It's proof he cares, proof he wants her to succeed in this role. She looks at her two maids. "Help me apply it every day. That way, your hands will soften too. I care about your hands just as he cares about mine." The maids protest at first, embarrassed, but Claire's insistence leaves them no choice. In the end, they agree. From that moment on, Claire declares that either May or Annie will always accompany her outside the mansion. No more mistakes like today. Annie also insists Claire begin wearing her new shoes a few hours each day to break them in for the banquet. "You and the Duke will look beautiful dancing together," May says with a smile. But Annie adds firmly, "Now that you're caring for your hands, it's time to start caring for your whole body. Beauty isn't built in a day. Trust me, if you begin now, you'll be stunning by the banquet." Claire protests, embarrassed. "That's too much for me. Maybe I'll just use it on the day itself." But Annie shakes her head. "No, my lady. Trust the process." The night of the banquet finally arrives. On her bed, a breathtaking gown awaits. A dress of shimmering blue, stitched to perfection. Claire spent the entire night staring at it, her nerves refusing to let her sleep. Tomorrow, the eyes of high society will fall on her, and for the first time, she won't just be a shadow in the room. In the past, Claire's sister Amelia always claimed the finest gowns, leaving Claire to wear whatever scraps were left. At banquets, she was the one people laughed at, the one whispered about from the corners of the hall. Tonight, those memories weighed heavily on her. Her maids noticed. "My lady, are you all right?" Annie asked carefully. Claire had been zoning out, staring at the blue dress with an uncertain gaze. Claire confessed softly, "I have no idea what looks good. How did Amelia always give orders so confidently, always looking perfect at these banquets?" Then after a pause, she added, "Makeup, I want it to be like a picture frame." Annie blinked. "A frame, my lady?" Claire smiled faintly, embarrassed but sincere. "Yes. My husband is the most handsome man in the kingdom. Standing next to him, I cannot try to steal attention. My role is to compliment him, like a frame that makes the art even more beautiful." Annie bowed her head, touched by her words. "I understand. Then I will make you the most graceful frame tonight." But before the preparations could finish, May rushed in, her hands trembling. In them was Claire's shoe, ruined beyond repair. Tears filled her eyes. "My lady, I don't know how this happened. Should we search for the culprit?" Claire shook her head gently. "No, that won't solve anything. Is there another pair?" Only a pair of tight, barely worn blue shoes remained, too snug for comfort. Yet Claire smiled and said firmly, "These will do. They're perfect." Annie narrowed her eyes. "Don't worry, my lady. I'll find out who did this before the night is over." Claire nodded. Yes, destroying someone else's things is unforgivable. Finally, the transformation was complete. With delicate makeup and her shimmering blue gown, Claire stood before the mirror. May gasped, "My lady, you've never looked more beautiful." Claire chuckled shyly. "Thank you, even if it's just flattery." But Annie stepped closer, her voice steady. "It's not flattery. If you don't believe us, just watch your husband's face when he sees you." A knock at the door silenced the room. Ian's voice came from the other side. "Claire, are you ready?" The door opened, and Claire's breath caught. The Duke stood there in formal attire, impossibly handsome, like a prince from a painting. She finally understood why all the noble women were obsessed with him. Her heart whispered, "Can I truly walk beside someone like this?" Flustered, she murmured, "This is the first time I've dressed up so much." Ian's gaze lingered on her. For once, the Duke of Eder was speechless. Finally, he said simply, "You're beautiful." Of course, Claire didn't believe him. He thought he was only saying it to act the role of a good husband before the maids. "It feels strange to hear compliments so directly," she muttered. But Ian stepped closer, his voice firm. "No, you truly look beautiful tonight." Her cheeks warmed. To cover her nerves, she returned the compliment. "And you look like a noble prince straight out of a painting." Behind them, Annie whispered triumphantly, "See, my lady? Now you know we weren't just flattering you." And with that, the couple departed for the banquet. The grand hall fell silent as they entered. Every eye turned, fixed on them. Claire could feel the stares, sharp, assessing, relentless. She assumed they were all dazzled by Ian's beauty, but just having him by her side filled her with unexpected security. "They're looking at you," Ian murmured. Claire shook her head quickly. "No, they're looking at you."
He smirked. "You're far too oblivious when it comes to yourself." Her hands trembled, hidden in her gown. "I'm nervous. What if I forget how to greet people?" Ian leaned close, his voice steady. "Then let's get the hardest part out of the way first. I'll introduce you to everyone as the Duchess of Eder." She nodded, determined yet clearly trembling. He squeezed her hand gently. "Calm down, Claire. Enjoy yourself. And stop squeezing your hands so tightly. You'll hurt yourself." To ease her nerves, Ian shared quietly. "The first time I debuted in society, I was so nervous I walked with my left arm and left leg swinging together like some stiff soldier." Claire laughed despite herself, the image too absurd not to. "That's better," Ian said, watching her relax. "Now you're ready." A distinguished woman approached, her presence radiating elegance. "Ian," she said warmly, "it's been far too long." Claire quickly realized this was Countess Boyle, the evening's hostess and an old friend of Ian's mother. Both Claire and Ian thanked her graciously for the invitation. Claire lowered her head in a graceful bow. "It's an honor to finally meet you, Countess. Thank you for welcoming me tonight." The Countess's smile deepened. "So this is the Duchess of Eder. I can hardly believe little Ian already has a partner. Your wedding was simply beautiful." Claire's heart warmed as the Countess began recalling moments from Ian's childhood, his stubborn streak, his unshakable determination, and his habit of never letting go once he'd set his mind on something. Claire smiled faintly to herself. "Yes, he really is like that," she thought. "From the way he clings so fiercely to the woman he once loved, to how he suffers in silence when unwell, never daring to burden anyone with complaint." The Countess chuckled. "And yet, no one can truly hate him. He hides all those flaws behind that handsome face of his." Ian groaned. "Countess, must you embarrass me in front of my wife?" But Claire only laughed. It was the first time she had ever felt so welcomed at an event. Even such casual, warm conversations filled her chest with a happiness she had never known. The Countess clasped her hand gently. "I mustn't keep you for too long. Next time, my dear, join me for a tea party." Claire's eyes widened. A tea party? Amelia had always flaunted her invitations to such gatherings while Claire scrubbed floors and stitched old gowns back home. She wondered silently, what do women even talk about at tea parties? Love stories? Gossip? Her thoughts drifted, and Ian leaned down, voice low. "Claire, are you all right?" She blinked back to reality, smiling. "Yes, I'm just trying to keep my heart from leaping out of my chest. Standing by your side attracts so much attention." The Countess laughed knowingly. "Ian has always drawn gazes wherever he went. But don't think for a moment that you're overshadowed. Tonight, my dear, men and women alike are staring at you." Claire stiffened. "Oh no, am I making people uncomfortable?" The Countess studied her, almost shocked by her modesty. Ian shook his head softly. "Honestly, I prefer her this way. It's easier knowing she doesn't notice the stares." But the Countess's tone grew firm. "Modesty is admirable, Duchess, but confidence is just as important.
Everyone here is stunned by your beauty tonight. Don't ever forget that." Claire lowered her eyes, whispering humbly, "If I'm not embarrassing my husband, then that's already enough." The Countess squeezed her hand one last time. "Nonsense. You've done more than enough. Now, enjoy your evening." As she drifted away, Ian turned to Claire with a smile. "Shall we get something to eat?" But before they could take a step, another voice called out, then another. Soon, several couples gathered, eager to greet the Duke and Duchess of Eder. One by one, Claire exchanged polite introductions, curtsies, and smiles. Compliments flowed freely, more than she had ever received in her life. Yet she reminded herself, "This isn't for me. They're only flattering the Eder family." After what felt like an endless stream of greetings, Ian sighed under his breath. "We should have hosted a smaller banquet." Claire chuckled softly. "It's the first time I've truly felt how powerful the House of Eder is." Noticing yet another wave of nobles preparing to approach, Ian made a bold decision. He extended his hand toward Claire, his voice carrying just enough authority to silence the crowd. "Would you care for a dance?" Her heart fluttered. "Yes, I'd love to." The orchestra swelled as they stepped into the center of the hall. Every gaze followed them, sharp, curious, yet strangely admiring. But this time, Claire did not shrink from them. For the first time, she danced not as the overlooked daughter of the Morris family, but as the Duchess of Eder. She realized something then. This was unlike any event she had endured. She wasn't surviving it, she was living it. As they twirled, she leaned closer and whispered, "We're right in the middle of the hall. Is there a reason you always dance here?" Anne's lips curved into a small smile. "No particular reason, but the center is always the most open. On the edges, you risk bumping into others." Claire laughed quietly. Of course he'd think of something so practical. Then Ian added, his eyes softening, "Your dancing has improved a great deal." She blushed. "That's only thanks to my excellent teacher." And for a fleeting moment, Claire thought to herself, "This must be a dream." If Claire hadn't known Ian's heart already belonged to someone else, she might have been swept away like all the other young ladies in the room. But she knew her place. This marriage was only for 1 year, nothing more. Later, she accepted a dance with another young nobleman. It didn't take long for disaster to strike. Claire stumbled and stepped on his foot. The man laughed politely, asking if she wasn't very skilled at dancing. Her cheeks burned with embarrassment. She had practiced so hard, yet for some reason, the rhythm she thought she had mastered only seemed to work when she was with Ian. The young man ended the dance with a smile. "Duke Eder is truly fortunate to have married you." Claire lowered her head in a graceful bow, not daring to believe the compliment. But after a few dances, pain began to shoot through her feet. The new shoes pinched unbearably, each step more torturous than the last. All she wanted to do was slip them off and go barefoot, but her gown wasn't long enough to hide her feet. She had no choice but to endure. That's when Keith, the golden-eyed prince, appeared. "Duchess," he greeted smoothly. She returned the greeting with the same polite formality she always used, but he waved it off. "You really don't need to be so stiff with me. The food and drink tonight are excellent. You should try them." Claire shook her head. "I don't care for red wine." Keith's smile widened. "Good to know. I always used to bring wine when visiting Ian. Next time I'll find something you might like instead." He set his glass down and extended a hand. "May I have this dance?" Claire froze. Her foot throbbed painfully, but rejecting a prince's request would be unthinkable. She gathered her courage and was about to accept when Ian appeared. "I'm afraid that dance will have to wait," he firmly, slipping between them. "Another time, Your Highness." Keith's brow arched in mild surprise, but before he could reply, Ian pressed a hand to his temple. "Forgive me, Claire. I'm not feeling well." Startled, Claire rushed to his side. "Do you have a fever? You don't look well at all." The prince bowed gallantly, brushing a kiss across Claire's hand. "Then we'll postpone our dance. Duchess, I'll see you soon." As he left, Claire's heart raced. Seriously, if Ian doesn't hurry and make a move, how could any woman resist a man like the prince? On the way to the carriage, Ian murmured, "I'm sorry for cutting the evening short." Claire shook her head. "I had more than enough fun. Your health matters far more." But then Ian sighed. "The truth is, I lied." Claire blinked, confused. "Lied? About what? Are you really not sick?" He looked at her with that calm, steady gaze. "I only said that because I noticed your foot was hurting. You were walking differently." Her heart skipped. She tried to protest, insisting they should go back, that it was ridiculous to leave just for her. But suddenly, his hand slid around her waist, and in one swift motion, he lifted her effortlessly into his arms. "Ian, put me down!" she cried, her face burning with embarrassment. But his grip only tightened. "No, you're clearly in pain. If you're embarrassed, then close your eyes." The moment was charged, intimate, perfect for a kiss. Yet it never came. Instead, Ian carried her onward, his steps steady and unyielding. "We'll resume our lessons tomorrow," he said softly. Claire stammered, I don't want to take up your precious time." His answer was immediate. "Don't worry, I'm looking forward to it." The carriage ride stretched like an eternity. Ian leaned close enough for only her to hear. "We should find time to talk more privately, away from all those watchful eyes." Claire's voice was quiet, almost shy. "Yes, our best conversations always happen while we're dancing." Back in the carriage, she apologized again for ending the evening early, but Ian shook his head. "Don't. I was the one who suggested we leave. Besides, I had already spoken to everyone I needed to. And tonight," he glanced at her, his voice low, "tonight you played the role of Duchess better than I ever imagined. I'm not the only one who noticed how different you are from the rumors." Her heart warmed, but the pain in her feet quickly pulled her back to reality. Ian frowned. "How badly does it hurt? You broke in those shoes beforehand. How did this happen?" Claire explained softly that the reason her feet hurt so much was because of an accident earlier that morning. One of her shoes had been ruined, leaving her with no choice but to wear a pair she had never broken in. Ian's eyes narrowed. "Strange. Are the servants mistreating you again?" But Claire quickly shook her head. "No, it's my fault. I should have taken better care of them." He cut her off firmly. "Stop apologizing, Claire. Do you know who did this? Or are you planning to give another light punishment, like you did last time?" His voice sharpened, brimming with indignation. "Even if someone dislikes you, this is too far. Those shoes belong to the duchy. And you are the Duchess. You must take more care of yourself. What they did to you before, making you starve, was even worse than this. If anything like this happens again, you must tell me immediately. I'll deal with it. The servants need to remember exactly whom they serve." Claire lowered her gaze, both touched and unsettled by his anger. The next morning, she could hardly bring herself to rise from bed. Her thoughts circled endlessly around last night. It had been the first time in her life someone had carried her in their arms like that, and the memory left her flustered, her heart refusing to calm. A knock startled her. She sat up quickly. Ian's voice came through the door. "Good morning. Is it too early to wake you?" She opened the door, a little embarrassed. "No, I was just tired. My foot still aches a little, but I hardly ever notice my own injuries." He studied her with concern, then said, "We'll skip dance practice today. Just sit with me. Let's talk instead." She hesitated. "Talk? About what?" "Your childhood," Ian replied gently. "Even though we're married, I realize I know so little about you." So she told him how her entire world had once revolved around her grandmother, how the woman had raised her with both kindness and strictness, teaching her everything she knew until she passed away when she was only 10. Ian listened intently. "So it was your grandmother who taught you etiquette?" Claire nodded. "Yes. After she died, there was no tutor. My family said they couldn't afford one. In truth, they simply didn't want to spend money on me. Everything went to Amelia. Mother said if I did the cleaning, I could study with Amelia afterward. But of course, she never kept that promise. Her voice faltered, the old wound reopening. Ian leaned forward, his expression heavy with regret. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have made you recall painful memories. She shook her head quickly, but he went on, almost to himself. Your life has been far from ordinary, and yet, watching you yesterday, seeing how gracefully you carried yourself, it's astonishing. You were perfect. For someone who stopped formal learning at 10 to act so flawlessly as a duchess, it's unbelievable. Claire flushed, caught off guard. I've never received so many compliments before. Then accept them, Ian said firmly. It's all right to be happy when you're praised. Claire rose slowly, her eyes softening. There's something my grandmother used to say, a phrase that stayed with me. Learning is not just about waiting, but about stealing. When I was a child, I didn't understand it, but later I realized if I simply waited, no one would teach me. So I began to steal. Ian tilted his head. Steal. When Amelia had her lessons with the tutor, I would deliberately clean nearby. I listened to every word through the door. After the tutor left, I rushed to write everything down, copying it all from memory. For a moment, Ian was speechless. You endured so much and still found a way to grow? Claire smiled faintly. It's in the past. But my grandmother's words only made sense later when I entered high society. Young noblewomen usually learn etiquette by attending tea parties with their mothers. Since I never had that, I stood quietly in the corners of every event. I observed how others spoke, moved, laughed, and I stole it all, piece by piece, until I could imitate it well enough to blend in. Ian's chest tightened with admiration. Claire, you're incredible, truly. She laughed softly. Not really. You've achieved so much, Ian. That's just as impressive. But he shook his head, thoughtful. No, I feel as though I only waited for things to fall into place. I never fought the way you did. Claire's gaze warmed. You accomplished everything that came your way. That, too, is a strength, and it's something I admire about you. One truth Claire can't forget is that Ian only married her as a shield, a way to secure his future with the woman he truly loves. Yet, at the same time, that choice saved Claire from ruin. Rising from his chair, Ian said warmly, I was glad to hear more about you today. We should do this more often. Before Claire could reply, a maid arrived to call them for breakfast. Ian noticed her limping and half-joking, asked, Should I carry you to the table? Her face flushed red as she refused outright, but he only chuckled. In that case, I had the servants bring breakfast here instead. After their meal, the physician arrived to tend to Claire's injured foot, and soon Ian had new shoes delivered to her chamber. It seemed nothing escaped his attention. Later, a maid approached nervously. She introduced herself as Emma and asked if she could speak privately with the Duchess. Lowering her voice, she said, My lady, I believe it was Annie who ruined your shoes. Claire blinked in surprise. Why would you say that? Emma explained that Annie had easy access to her room and that the night before she had seen Annie in the hallway, clutching scissors with a dark look on her face. She's never liked you, my lady. I'm certain it was her. Claire frowned, unconvinced. Emma, holding scissors isn't proof of anything. I appreciate your concern, but I won't take accusations seriously without evidence. Emma pressed further, claiming she and Annie came from the same village, where Annie often caused trouble. Claire only shook her head gently. I'll be fine, but for now, let's keep this matter quiet. No need to spread unrest. Still, Claire couldn't ignore Emma's words. Later, as she passed a grand portrait of Ian when he first became Duke, she paused. Would Annie truly betray her like that? Annie was strict, yes, but never malicious. She worked hard and cared for others. Could Emma be twisting the truth? Claire chose silence, for now. But within days, the rumor spread like wildfire through the mansion. Annie had destroyed the Duchess's shoes. Given Annie's past reputation, especially for the incident where Claire had gone hungry, the staff quickly believed it. And worse, they mocked Claire openly, sneering that she was Annie's puppet, a coward, unfit for her role. In the office, Annie confronted her directly. "Why haven't you said anything about these rumors, my lady?" Her calm reply only frustrated her more. "I cannot stop people from talking." She slammed her hand against the table. "You don't care? You haven't even fired me. Do you know what they call you? Annie's puppet, coward, and more."
"But if nothing happens, I'll go to the Duke and confess myself." Claire tilted her head. "Annie, do you know the new maid, Emma?" "We come from the same village," Annie answered carefully, "but we're not close." Claire's eyes narrowed. "Then call her for me. Something about this doesn't add up. Would Annie truly betray her?" The doubt lingered, but Claire pushed it aside as she sorted through the invitations that had begun to arrive for the Eater household. Ever since the banquet, tea parties from all corners of society filled her desk, and as Duchess, even if only for a year, she knew she couldn't refuse. Her thoughts were interrupted by Emma, who stepped into the office with a practiced bow. "Is there anything you need, my lady?" Claire wasted no time. "Tell me, Emma, was it you who spread the rumors about Annie?" Emma stiffened. Then, with a rehearsed sigh, she confessed. "I only wanted to help. I asked the others if they knew anything, and the talk spread. I'm sorry." She lowered her gaze, feigning shame, before pleading, "Please, my lady, give me another chance. If you allow me to stay by your side, I'll find the proof against Annie." Claire studied her carefully. Emma's desperation was obvious, almost too obvious. In most households, being the lady's personal maid was a coveted honor, but here, in the Eater household, the role was a burden, drawing scorn and ridicule. Why was Emma so desperate for it? Still, Claire agreed. For now. Very well, one more pair of hands could be useful. Later, when Ian heard of her decision, his concern was plain. "You're really going to keep Emma close? Aren't the rumors already spreading too far?" Embarrassed that he had heard about the whispers behind her back, Claire tried to change the subject. But Ian pressed gently. "I'll trust you. You must have a reason for making Emma your personal maid. But tell me, do you still trust Annie?" Claire's answer was steady. "Yes. If Annie truly hated me, she wouldn't act so sloppily. Last time she made me go hungry without you noticing. She wouldn't ruin shoes in such an obvious way." Ian paused. "Then perhaps we should take another look at the shoes. There may be clues." Together, they entered the closet, only to find May already inside, rummaging through the pile of ruined shoes, her eyes swollen from crying. "May, what are you doing in here?" Claire asked softly. Through tears, the maid replied, "I couldn't believe Annie would do this. She's strict, yes, but she always cared for you, so I wanted to see for myself." Claire's heart warmed. Even May believed Annie's innocence. Whatever doubts remained began to fade. But then Claire noticed something else. May's hands, flushed red and irritated. "Your hands, they weren't like this yesterday." May winced. "They started itching this morning. I don't know why." Ian stepped forward, examining her hands with the soldier's precision. "This doesn't look like simple dryness. We'll have the doctor check." The physician arrived and quickly diagnosed it. "Hives, likely from contact with a plant or insect. It isn't serious. Apply this ointment and it will heal." But May shook her head. "I didn't touch any plants or insects. I spent the whole night here in the closet, staring at the shoes." A heavy silence fell. Ian narrowed his eyes, pulling on a glove.
He lifted one of the ruined shoes and ran his hand across the surface. After a few moments, the glove turned faintly yellow. Claire's breath caught. Anne's expression darkened. This liquid, it must be what caused the hives. Someone laced these shoes with it. If you had worn them... He trailed off, unable to finish. His eyes burned with quiet fury. I'm just glad you never put them on. Someone wanted to hurt you, deliberately. May, still shaken, whispered, but doesn't that seem strange? Why ruin the shoes after putting the liquid on them? If they wanted her to wear them, destroying them makes no sense. Her words landed like a blade. Two culprits, one who tainted the shoes, another who destroyed them. Ian clenched his jaw. This has gone far enough. To think the staff would dare. If they're willing to harm you once, what next? His voice was low, controlled, but lethal. I'll gather everyone. We'll find out who's behind this before it escalates any farther. Claire, calm but resolute, turned to Ian. Trust me, she said softly. I have a plan. Soon we'll know exactly who's behind all of this, and when we do, they'll be taught their lesson in front of everyone. And so Emma was brought closer, working as Claire's new personal maid. Each day, Emma conveniently discovered items missing, and without fail, pointed the blame at Annie or May. Small combs, ribbons, trinkets, always appearing in their rooms as if planted there. But Claire didn't take the bait. Instead, she pretended to favor Emma, watching closely to see who would slip first. But strangely, Annie never lashed out at Emma, even when Emma openly crossed the line. That patience told her more than words could ever. Then came the moment Claire had been waiting for. One morning, Emma rushed in, her face pale, but her voice sharp. My lady, terrible news. The sapphire necklace, it's gone. The household stirred in chaos. Anne accompanied Claire to her chambers, and yes, the necklace had indeed vanished. Does anyone remember touching it? Claire asked calmly. Emma seized the chance. Your Grace, please allow us to investigate immediately. We must act before it disappears forever. Anne agreed, but with fairness. Then you three will be searched first. After all, you had the most access. May and Annie submitted without hesitation. Nothing was found in May's quarters, nothing in Emma's. But when Annie's closet was opened, there it was, the sapphire necklace glittering in the shadows. Gasps filled the air. Emma wasted no time, her voice sharp with triumph. I knew it. Annie, you thief. You should be thrown in chains for stealing from the Duchess. But Annie didn't fight. She simply lowered her head. It was me. I accept whatever punishment my lady decides. And yes, it was me who ruined the shoes as well. Claire's heart sank. Annie, I thought we were friends. I'm disappointed. Her voice softened, but then sharpened again with resolve. Still, as a final courtesy to that friendship, I'll give you a chance. Because this necklace, it's no ordinary necklace. Everyone froze as Claire revealed a small vial in her hand. I laced it with a slow-acting poison. Whoever touched it will soon fall ill. But don't panic. There's an antidote, and I kept only one. Gasps rippled again. Annie took the vial with steady hands, ready to drink, but before she could lift it to her lips, Emma lunged forward in a frenzy. She snatched the antidote and swallowed it without hesitation. The room went silent. Claire's gaze hardened. Emma, explain yourself. Why drink the antidote if you never touched the necklace? Emma's excuses tumbled out, desperate and incoherent. I was worried last night. I must have brushed against it without realizing. But Claire's eyes narrowed. Her composure cut through the chaos like a blade. Don't worry, Emma. If it wasn't you, the true culprit's symptoms will reveal themselves soon enough. Emma's voice rose in panic. I told you I didn't steal it. It was in Annie's closet. You all saw it. But Annie's voice came calm, almost pitying. Give it up, Emma. You've already lost. Claire's tone was unshakable. Tell us the truth. Now.
Emma's shoulders slumped, her mask cracking. At last she spat out the truth. Fine. It was me. I took the necklace. Annie walked around acting so superior as your personal maid, and I couldn't stand it anymore. I wanted to bring her down. The confession hung heavy in the air, but Claire wasn't done. Her eyes dropped to Emma's hands, red, inflamed, irritated. Then answer me one last thing, she said coldly. Why are your hands like that? What happened to them? Emma faltered, searching desperately for an excuse, her lips trembling but no words forming. Before Emma could scramble together another excuse, Claire gently but firmly took hold of her trembling hands. Her voice was steady, cutting through the chaos like a blade. These aren't just rashes, Emma. They're hives, caused by a liquid someone smeared on my ruined shoes. Your hands have been red since the beginning. Emma's eyes widened in shock, her body shaking as she stammered, It's Annie. She's the reason I did it. She forced me. Claire's patience snapped. Her gaze hardened. Enough. She turned to Ian. My lord, may I leave the rest to you? Without hesitation, Ian summoned 2 butlers.
His voice was cold, commanding. Take her to the dungeon. Emma's face went pale. Dungeon? Why? Annie only had to serve you as punishment. Why am I imprisoned? Claire's voice remained calm, merciless in its clarity. Because your situation is different. Every word you've spoken has been a lie. Annie faced her punishment honestly. You hid behind deceit and malice. Emma screamed as the butlers dragged her away, her voice echoing through the halls until it faded into silence. Claire turned to Annie, her eyes searching. You knew. You endured this in silence, even knowing the truth. Why? Annie lowered her head, shame filling her voice. Emma and we come from the same village. My mother owed her family a debt. When I saw her tampering with the shoes, I couldn't expose her. I destroyed them instead, thinking I could hide her crime and protect you both. Claire's heart softened, though her tone remained firm. Annie, if you'd only been honest from the start, none of this would have happened. Tears welled in Annie's eyes. I was foolish. I am ready for whatever punishment you decide, my lady. Claire thought for a moment before speaking with quiet authority. Then here is your punishment. For 1 year, you are forbidden to lie to me. Not once, not for any reason. Annie's lips quivered, and then, overwhelmed, she dropped to her knees, tears spilling down her face. Thank you. Thank you for trusting me, my lady. May, still shaken, whispered, But how did you even buy poison for the necklace? Claire's lips curved into a small, knowing smile. There was never any poison. Both maids stared in disbelief as Claire walked away. Her sharp mind and unshakable calm had unraveled Emma's lies without a single drop of real venom. Later, in Ian's office, Annie was summoned once more. She bowed her head low, bracing herself for judgment. But Ian's tone surprised her. I didn't call you here to punish you. I called you because I need answers. His eyes narrowed. Are there others in this mansion who still wish Claire harm? Annie hesitated, then confessed. Yes, more than a few. I never truly wanted the Duchess harm. Even when my words were harsh, it wasn't hatred. But the others, she faltered. Ian's voice hardened. Then tell me, why did you starve her? Annie's shoulders slumped. Finally, the truth spilled out. I overheard the others plotting. They wanted to slip laxatives into her meals. I panicked. I didn't know what to do, so I destroyed all the food. But when they refused to stop, I told them it would be better to starve her instead. It was wrong, I know. Ian's fist tightened, fury flashing in his eyes. All this happened under my roof, and I didn't see it? He shoved a parchment toward her. Write their names. Every last one of them. Annie obeyed, her hand trembling as she scribbled each name. When Ian read the list, his jaw clenched. He had suspected these very people. Still, he hesitated. Replacing them all at once would only upset Claire, who would notice immediately. He gave Annie a sharp look. Keep watch on them. For now, I need their true intentions revealed, especially after Emma's betrayal. They likely see Claire as the villain now. Silence hung heavy between them. Finally, Annie bowed. If that is all, I will take my leave. But Ian's voice stopped her. There is one more thing. Tell me, do you know what Claire truly likes? Annie's eyes glinted with a trace of mischief. Shouldn't a husband know these things better than I? Still, she answered, the Duchess doesn't care for flashy things, but she loves vibrant things more than she admits. She always claims it's not her style, but I believe she's just afraid it won't suit her. What she really needs, Annie hesitated, then looked Ian straight in the eye, is your love. Fill her with it. Give her affection. That is what will give her confidence. Her words struck deeper than Ian expected. He dismissed her, but long after Annie left, he sat at his desk, her words echoing in his mind. For reasons he couldn't explain, he felt a powerful desire rising within him, an overwhelming urge to see Claire smile, to make her happy, to give her the love she had never known.
So, we'll have to wait to see this romance develop further. I'm still not sure if she's going to end up with Ian or if the plot twist will be that she ends up with Keith. What do you think? Don't forget to like the video, comment, and follow the channel so you don't miss any videos. Kisses!